The Rick Amato Show on KCBQ.
Reluctantly crouched at the starting line, engines pumping and thumping in time. The green light flashes, the flags go up. Churning and burning, they yearn for the cup. They deftly maneuver and muscle for rank. Fuel burning fast on an empty tank. Reckless and wild, they pour through the turns. Their prowess is potent and secretly stern.
Welcome to the award-winning Rick Amato Show.
All right, folks, as you've, I'm sure, been following in the news, that there's been some tragedy. Well, it's tragedy everywhere today. At the Occupy San Diego protest, a tragic death today, but across the world in the Middle East and Egypt, we're seeing that involving those of Christians. Joining us at this time is Fox News national security expert, Dr. Waleed Phares. Dr. Phares, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Yes, Dr. Phares. So update our listeners with what's happening there, please.
Well, you had over the weekend, yesterday, a massive attack by units from the Egyptian armed forces, from the army, smashing dozens of Coptic demonstrators. At the same time, from side streets, armed thugs that the demonstrators have identified as Salafists, meaning extremists, also engaged in the killing and in the shooting and in the beating. There was a demonstration by the Copts, tens of thousands, in the midst of Cairo, in protest for attacks against their churches, including one in southern Egypt. And this is not just an isolated one or two incidents. This is part of a series of attacks by those extremists, by those jihadists, against the Copts, including after the fall of Mubarak. We know that before that fall, for the previous many years, there were significant actions against the Copts. But one would think that the Arab Spring is in Egypt, and after 1 million people were in Tahrir Square and the army did not act against them, that this is not going to happen to the weakest segment of society, the Copts. It did happen, and that's why it's a big issue. It's a big issue.
What should we in America be watching for here? What are the, aside from the obvious that that a group of folks, in this case Christians, are being targeted violently? Is this a sign that the those in power do not have a full grip on the control of the country?
Actually, I think they do have. That's the biggest problem. I mean, if we're talking about Salafists...
Yeah, I see your point. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, against the Copts, well, that's the same old story. But the army is sending its own vehicles against the Copts. There's something utterly wrong. This is the army that we have trusted. This is the one that we are funding. We're sending billions of dollars, you know that, Rick,
right,
to Egypt for the last many, decades, 3 decades. And this is the institution that we have trusted to transfer power to a democracy. So now if you are the Christians of Egypt, 15 million, and even if you are the Muslim moderates of Egypt, and they are the majority, you are squeezed between, the military, who are behaving that way against the Christians and against moderates, and on the other hand, the Muslim Brotherhood, who are, preparing themselves to take over in a few weeks from now, a couple of months from now, in the elections.
Oh, man. Yeah, Dr. Phares, this is, actually, I'm at a loss of words to describe how troubling this is, considering that it's state-run, so to speak, state-run crackdown.
It is, but one will have to analyze why. I mean, the military have no interest in showing an image of persecution of their own, people, especially of the Christians, at a time where this Congress is the one who is dispersing the money. Of course, the administration manages it and sends it, but it's the American people through Congress that vote for it, and so goes for the Europeans. So what is it behind that decision to stop the Copts from demonstrating? I think that the military do not want the Copts to create a Coptic issue, because if they do and raise the issue internationally, the world will know that there's a force persecuting them, and we'll know the name of that force, and these are the Salafists. And the Salafists, my friend, are the allies of the Muslim Brotherhood. And it seems to me that there is a deal between the military and the Muslim Brotherhood, a deal that unfortunately we have sort of supported, And that deal, the Muslim Brotherhood will break it if the army goes against the Salafists. So it's a very Levantine sort of complex, but the bottom line is that the army is stopping the Copts because it has a deal with the Muslim Brotherhood. That's what it is.
And have you been observing the Obama administration's response to this out of Washington?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I mean, over the past 24 hours, I mean, it's online, it's in the news now. It is a reminder, and you and I have discussed this, of what happened when the 1.5 million Iranians were demonstrating against the Ayatollahs. Remember, in 2009? The statement from Washington was intriguing, actually. It was shocking. It was, we don't meddle. This is not our business. And now the Copts are demonstrating, and dozens are smashed in front of the entire world community. And the answer, the statement by Washington, we want everybody to cool off, to cool down, to calm down. I mean, we don't have a statement on calming down when there are tanks or vehicles crushing Copts who are demonstrating peacefully. It means that Washington doesn't want to raise the issue of the Coptic persecution, doesn't want to indicate that the Salafists are a threat. They only want in Washington to go through those elections as soon as possible, as swiftly as possible, and get the Muslim Brotherhood to come to government so that they could do business with them. That's what it seems to me is the case.
Wow. Is this issue getting enough attention? Is it getting enough attention as it deserves? And I ask that question as someone who's been really focusing his time on the Occupy protests across the country.
Right.
I to me, it seems like it's not getting the attention it deserves, but maybe I'm not, I can't be everywhere 24/7. So maybe it is, and I'm missing something here.
You're not. Actually, you are making the case here. It's a very interesting issue that you're raising, Rick, is that the country now is facing off with its socio-economic, I'd say political problems. And you're the expert on that, on the Occupy X movement. So the American public is focusing on that, is focusing on the economy, and at the same time, those national security issues coming from the Middle East, which are changing the Middle East in a sense that would become a much bigger, not just national security issue in the future, but also economic future. I mean, look at the Middle East. A year from now, Egypt will be ruled by the Muslim Brotherhood. Libya will be ruled by Islamist fundamentalists. Tunisia will be struggling with Al-Nahda, a cousin of the Muslim Brotherhood. God knows where Syria is going, because it's going between one or the other, either the Ba'athists or the Muslim Brotherhood. So these rapidly changing things are happening while our public is now been drawn into the issue that you were talking about, of course.
And this, of course, would be the right time for any country who wants to do something without fearing reprisal from the U.S., this would be the time to do it.
Yes, because the public is really looking at what, this thing hurtling inside our own cities on the one hand, and debating it, and the economy is pressing. And Iran is developing its missiles, and Iran is expanding in the region, and it's going to be seizing parts of Iraq. The Pakistani situation is getting very serious, very dangerous. In Afghanistan, we are going to be sitting down with the Taliban cutting deals. The NB are seizing Egypt. Hezbollah in Lebanon is dominating completely the situation. So, the picture outside is simple. While we are being made busy on the inside of our battlefield, the outside battlefield is slipping away.
Dr. Phares, I know you're in your book. You are optimistic long term, concerned short term. How does this play into your optimism? Maybe a better question is, how does this play into your pessimism over the short term in the Middle East?
Look, I would put it outside pessimism and optimism for a second, and I would call it cold realism, in the sense these are equations. Meaning, if we maintain the same direction in foreign policy in Washington as a whole, we can project almost easily that the Islamists and the jihadists and their allies are going to become the dominant force in the region, with all of the strategic, security, and economic consequences on oil and everything else. if we change that direction in Washington, we may have a chance, not immediately, but we may have a chance in rectifying the direction and having that one shot for civil societies to seriously rise and then push back against the extremists. That's why I am optimistic, meaning only if we have the right direction. I can't be optimistic if we have the wrong direction.
Right.
So the region, let me say this, the region is ready if we go in the right direction, but the region cannot do anything if we go in the wrong direction.
Sure. But when I hear you say that this clear signal from Washington is that they're waiting for the Muslim Brotherhood Society to take power so they can broker a deal. Maybe I'm too naive here, but it just seems like that's going the wrong direction. There's more to it than that, I suppose. Huh? It depends how they.
You pinned it down. It is a wrong, because if we think that the Muslim Brotherhood are going to be reforming and becoming social democrats, becoming Christian Democrats, or even Muslim Democrats, then yeah, let it be. But that's not the case. I mean, I have followed the issue of Salafism and Islamism and jihadism for the last 30 years. 30 years. Under the Cold War, after the Cold War, before and after 9/11. And one thing is clear is that the Muslim Brotherhood, the Salafists, and the Khomeinis, their Iranian cousins, have a long-term strategy. And that long-term strategy takes advantages of our policies. We are short-term. We are 4 years, 2 years, 5 years, the French and others. And these guys are 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. So as long as I'm not seeing any reform on the other side that would, do what Gorbachev did with the Soviet Union, it's not happening yet, these ideological forces are going to seize power and continue. They're not going to seize power and reform. Seize power and seize more power and more power.
Wow. Tell us about your books, please.
The Coming Revolution, Struggle for Freedom in the Middle East, available everywhere. This is a book that, I don't want to say predicted, but projected.
Yeah.
It has been happening till now, but in its, last chapters, it projects even beyond. It's not just the crisis that we're seeing right now in 2011, but 12, 13, 14, and maybe 15.
Wow. All right. And your website is walidphares.com. That's WALIDPHARES.com. Dr. Phares, as always, we appreciate you joining us at this late hour from the East Coast.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a good night.
You too. All right. Wow.